The trade deadline is less than 2 weeks away. It's on Tuesday, November 4th, and we are talking Titans trade candidates. This is our Titans trade deadline preview. Which players could be moved? Which players could get them a return that is worth moving? And which players are untouchable? This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville in partnership with 440 Sports. I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin Melo. Justin, what do you think about our new little logo intro thing there? Instead of just like a logo white circle, we have like a little bit more, it's a little more produced now. What do you think of it?
It looks so damn good. Obviously, you're the one who did it. It looks incredible and really gives this show an official feel to it, if you will. It's like a properly produced intro, and this is a properly produced show. You guys know that. That's why you watch it. Graver knocks that stuff out of the park. I'm just here to give bad opinions. He does all the production stuff. I love the new intro. I hope you guys do too.
Your opinions are not bad, Justin. They're yours and they're genuine. And you and I never sit here and say, you argue that side of it, I'll argue this side of it. No, we always share how we really feel. And that, it doesn't matter if people disagree. At least you're giving your honest feelings on all topics related to the Tennessee Titans. And today that topic is going to be about which players they might trade, which players you and I sort of more or less just expect them to trade. Is this team going to be as active as we expect at the deadline? I kind of think so. And this morning, Wednesday morning, Jeremy Fowler put out an article for ESPN, trade deadline, ranking top 25 players who could be on the move with team intel, projecting the likelihood of trades, player breakdowns, best fits. All this information continues to come out, connecting certain members of the Titans organization to as possible trade candidates. So who are those players? Has anything changed in the last 2 or 3 weeks since the last time we talked about which players the Titans should be moving? Well, they've lost more games. That's kind of the only thing that's changed.
Yeah, naturally. Let's just get right into it. The 3 players that Jeremy Fowler included in that article are Chigakonko, tight end, cornerback Roger McCreary, and edge rusher Arden Key. I am not surprised to see any of those names listed. I've got more names to add. When I say I'm not surprised to see them listed, doesn't mean that I necessarily agree that they should definitely trade those players. My brief opinion on all 3 is pretty straightforward and simple. I'm split down the middle on Chig. You know, I think he's a young player who's a useful roster player, but he's on an expiring contract. I think he's replaceable, so I'm not shocked to see him included. Roger McCreary is the one that I don't necessarily agree with, though I'm not shocked to see him included. I think they've got enough holes at cornerback as is going into the offseason because I'm projecting that they're going to cut L'Jarius Sneed. They also need a starter opposite L'Jarius Sneed on the outside after trading Jarvis Brownlee. And if they get rid of McCreary, then they're going to need probably a third starter at nickel corner. Never in a good place when you've got multiple holes on your team. And then at one position, you have a hole at every single position within that room. 3 roster holes at corner if they trade McCreary. Why am I not surprised then? On the flip side of that, he's in a contract year. They've shown a willingness to trade players that they inherited from the previous regime or cut ties altogether, right? Like the Kenneth Murrays and the Jarvis Brownlees and the Cheeto Awuzies. We can go on. Harold Landry. And they've got a weird thing with arm length, by the way. Like, they really like guys who have long arms. I get that. I like prospects with long arms. You know when I stop caring about arm length?
Let me guess.
You know what I'm going to say. You know when I stop caring?
Is it when they get to the NFL and show that it doesn't really matter if they have shorter arms because they're just a good player anyway?
Correct. That's when I stop caring about arm length, when they look to be pretty good in the NFL. So that's what I don't agree with McCreary. But I'm expecting it at this point. Like, the buzz is constantly there around the trade. We know that they have like a thing with arm length, and we know he's in a contract year. And we know that they don't really like anyone. And I mean, anyone is a bit hyperbole, but they almost don't like anyone that they inherited from Rand
Hyperbole,
Carthon.
you mean?
Yes, that's what they almost don't like anyone they got from Ran Carthon and John Robinson. Now remember, they got him from John Robinson. I think they hate the Ran Carthon guys more than they hate the John Robinson guys, and there's fewer of the John Robinson guys. But I don't agree with the McCreary thing. I don't know that we wanted to get full blown into that side of the discussion on him, but feel free.
Yeah, why not? I mean, here's what was written by Jeremy Fowler in this article. The buzz. Similar to Key, McCreary is a defensive starter who doesn't fit the long-term plans of a team in transition. He wouldn't write that if he didn't get that information from somewhere. His name circulated in trade buzz at roster cutdowns too.
Wow.
So the fact that they've been trying to move
I
him
don't remember
for
hearing that.
Yeah, I don't either. He's a reliable corner who can play inside or outside, traits that typically elicit some type of trade interest, even if just for day 3 pick swaps. So that, that sounds like a guy who's going to get traded for a 6th round conditional pick or a 6th for McCreary and a 7th or something like that. Like that sounds like that's what they would take for a player. It's kind of crazy, but all 3 players listed in this article are on the last year of their contracts. And I totally get what you're saying about opening all these holes in the cornerback room. I also feel like if they don't like McCreary, it's for more reasons than just the football on the field, because like is written here, like you just said, like he's been a solid player for them. I don't know if he's like the best cornerback yet. Like you wouldn't build him in a lab if you had the chance to because of some of his physical limitations, including the shorter arms. But look, there's a path to rebuilding this cornerback room in one offseason, or at least beginning to, and it involves signing veterans, which I know that's like antithetical to this whole staff's approach to roster construction. You would be signing like stopgap Band-Aid veterans that would be starters for a year or two until you can draft their replacements.
That
and you draft somebody
this year. I'm sorry, with Cody Barton and everyone else they signed, that's been a disaster.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying those players will be good. They'll be fieldable, and I don't think that this team is going to be competitive in 2026 because they do have too many holes. And we're looking at a multi-year rebuild, and it's going to be the first year of a new head coach who's going to want to build the team partly in their vision that hopefully aligns with the vision Mike Borgonzi's building this team with. But this seems like a good spot, Justin. I told you before the show I wanted to do a little mini rant about culture and building team culture. And this is, based on an article I read recently. And as I said to you, I'm kind of mad at myself because I can't remember some of the specifics of this article well enough to go find it again because I really wanted to read a couple passages from it. But basically, the point of what I was gonna read you guys, if I could have found it, was that building a team culture is not just about how you talk to the players and how you structure team meetings and practices and the pillars that you emphasize and everything you can do as a coach to try to communicate to players. Culture comes from within as well, and it comes from the players themselves. And this is not specific to Roger McCreary, and this is not meant to talk bad about McCreary and his team, how he is as a teammate in the locker room, his work ethic. I think he works really hard, and he's a physical, tough player who has played a ton of snaps, and he doesn't sit out with minor injuries and stuff. And I get why it feels like Roger McCreary would be a good culture fit. But the point of this article was sort of you need players who are going to be culture leaders themselves. And not to say McCreary is or isn't, but McCreary, and it's no fault of his own, has been in the NFL since 2022 with the Titans. 2022 was the season the Titans closed the year by losing 7 games in a row. They go 6-11 the next year, fire Mike Vrabel. Then they hire Brian Callahan and go 3-14, and now they're 1-6 this season. Roger McCreary has experienced nothing but losing teams and getting worse as the year goes on. And again, it's not his fault, but as they look to bring in their type of guy, they want guys who are going to come in and be culture leaders. Look at the draft class with Cam Ward obviously heading things up. Femi Oladejo, say what you want about where he's at as a football player on the field. I think the personality that they brought in is exactly the kind of player they're looking for. Same with, you just go through the draft class. Kevin Winston Jr., Chim Dike, Elikiah Manor, Gunnar Helm, the guys who Cam Ward alongside were getting in the building at 5:30 in the morning so that they could fully pick up and grasp the offense as quickly as possible. This is the culture leader type that they're bringing in. Guys that came from winning programs in college who can bring a winning culture. And it's going to start with whoever they hire as the next head coach. But I guess the point of this rant is that like this coach that this article was about realized that I can't just convince some of the veterans how to do things a new way. I need new veterans who are going to come in here and show younger guys how to do things a new way. And again, it's not McCreary's fault that he's been stuck in a crappy organization for all this time. He could go somewhere that has a strong culture and fit into it perfectly fine. But the Titans don't have a strong culture. And if you're looking for guys who are going to turn things around, like it's hard when you've been doing something the same way for 5 years or 4 years of your career to just the fifth year. Now you have to do it very differently. So my point is that the Titans are going to have to get rid of some guys that you like and that you feel could be solutions to certain spots in order to get better in the long run. And it might make the rebuild take a little bit longer, but if you do it the right way and it takes an extra year, that's the end goal, is to get there the right way. So long rant to say, sometimes moving a player is just about giving everyone a chance to reset your locker room, the player himself in a better organization potentially. And it's not just, again, this isn't about Roger McCreary specifically. It's about any player that they are looking at moving on from. There's going to be a ton of roster turnover, and we've seen a ton of roster turnover even in the last year already. And a lot of the guys that were part of that turnover are going to get turned over again as Mike Borgonzi shapes this team in his vision, and alongside, hopefully, a new head coach who hopefully has a strong vision of what a Tennessee Titan is. That's how you really start to rebuild that winning culture. And it's going to be tough. And I think it's going to be tough on fans to part ways with guys that they might be attached to. I really like Roger McCreary. You really like Roger McCreary. We all like Roger McCreary. But I don't know. It's about the bigger picture, I guess.
I'm going to challenge you really quickly because I know I know he's a better football player, but I don't know if that's the out to this question. So what's the difference with Peter Skoronski? Like, he's done nothing but lose for the Tennessee Titans. He lost at Northwestern more than McCreary lost at Auburn. Like, why is Peter Skoronski a part of it and Roger McCreary is? They've done nothing but they've lost more with Peter Skoronski than they have with Roger McCreary, because Skoronski came in an even worse year. McCreary at least experienced some semblance of success under Vrabel. Like, what's the Peter Skoronski difference?
I mean, it's a good point that you raised there, and we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And we don't know who the true leaders are and who aren't. There has been talk that, I mean, I've heard it reported from people in the building who are in the building, who go in the building a lot, that Peter Skoronski is sort of the leader of the offensive line. Like, I've heard him referred to that way. And he is the best player on the offensive line right now. And the Titans have been working hard to rebuild an offensive line for a long time. Now, when it comes to like specifically their experience in the NFL, yeah, there's not a lot of difference. And it is hard. Like, you have kind of caught me there. I'm not going to lie. Again, we don't really know what it's like in the building and who the true leaders and the culture leaders or whatever are. Peter Skoronski is the best player they got on the O-line, and he's developing into an all-pro level guard.
And he's a better player than Roger McCreary. Like, I'm not, but I still think there's something. The reason I tried to catch you there is, I'll say this: like, I try to be someone who can see beyond the surface level. But I just can't fully get there with you on Roger McCreary, because to me, it's like we talk about cult. Like, yeah, Femi Oladipo might be a great culture fit. He's been a bad player so far. He's not helping them win football games. Jalen Armour-Davis might be a better culture fit than Jarvis Brownlee, but he's a really bad football player, and they've gotten significantly worse since replacing Jarvis Brownlee with him. When I look at this team, and it's like, I just, as a fan, I can't get past how long is this rebuild going to take? Rebuild should not take 5 years. And I take exception to what you said in terms of it might take a little longer. Like, it's already going to take long. They can't be in the business of creating more holes for themselves by getting rid of good 25-year-old football players who, like, I wrote an article this morning about the Jalen Armour-Davis, Jarvis Brownlee thing. I could get there with Jarvis Brownlee because I know he probably has an attitude problem, and I could get that why he might not be a culture fit. But when you're talking about trading a good 25-year-old football player who's been available, who's been versatile, who has played so many, he was their most snaps football player as a rookie, and he's essentially continued to be that way, and we haven't heard a peep about an attitude problem or a culture problem. I can't get there with Roger McCreary because this team already has so many holes. So I can't get behind creating another one for something that I don't know whether it exists or not.
I understand what you're saying, but like I get it if you disagree. I don't necessarily disagree. I think if the front office views Roger McCreary as not a player that is part of their long-term plans for whatever reason, whether it's his arm length or his culture fit or whatever it might be that they're never going to tell us, then they need to do what they think is best for building this team the way that they want to build it. And I know like maybe this front office hasn't earned benefit of the doubt yet.
No.
They've only been in power for about a season. I know Chad Brinker's been there longer and everybody hates him for no reason. That's a shot at all of you who hate Chad Brinker. Yes, I'm coming for you. I just want to give him a chance to like be bad before I start hating him, I guess, is where I come from on Chad Brinker. I'm not saying he's going to be great, but the hate for him is out of control amongst Titans fans. And Mike Borgonzi's been doing this he's been in power for 1 year. And the goal was that Brian Callahan would be your coach and that this year would be the first year of the rebuild. But Brian Callahan failed and the team failed. The decision makers failed by letting him be the coach since January. Like that should have never happened. That was a big mistake. I think we can all see that in hindsight, regardless of how we felt at the time. Like you wanted to have that hope at the time that like, well, they didn't fire him, so maybe he can be the guy. But we should have known. The writing was always on the wall, and that was a huge mistake. But that definitely delays your rebuild or extends your rebuild. This should have been year 1 of the rebuild. This is now year 0, and next year will be year 1 because it's a new head coach taking over. I look at the Lions, and I know like the Lions are like everyone can't just do what the Lions did, but that is a good model in terms of a rebuild that wasn't long, but it wasn't like, oh, you bring in a new head coach and a new quarterback and bang, you're rebuilt, like some rebuilds have been in more recent years. The Lions went 3-12 in 2019. They went 5-11 in 2020 and fired their head coach, Matt Patricia. And then that's where the Titans are, 5-11 season, which is going to be worse than 5-11. Let's just be honest about that.
They're not going to be 5-11.
Brad Holmes came in, hired Dan Campbell. They gutted the roster. They went 3-13-1 in Dan Campbell's first season. That's, if you're lucky, Titans fans, that's next year. You know, you get multiple high picks in a row. I mean, if you're lucky, the new head coach comes in, guts the roster, starts building a culture, but you still are bad. Because that's what usually happens in the first year of a head coach's regime for a team as bad as the Titans are, not a team that was like unable to get over the hump, so they fire their head coach and bring in somebody. Like a team this bad is going to have another bad year under the first head coach. How many
3-win seasons did the Lions have?
They had 2 3-win seasons in 3 years. And then in Campbell's second year, they go 9-8. And they start to show the signs of progress, and they started that year bad, and they got better as the year went on, and they closed the year hot. And then they've been 12-5, 15-2, 5-2 right now. Like, that's the timeline that I'm trying to describe, is that they're not going to be necessarily good next year. I think next year is another bad year because you're trading away players. You're opening, like you said, holes on your roster. It's going to take time to fill those holes with draft picks who have developed enough to play. And you have to hit on draft picks. That's a huge part of this equation. You have to hit on draft picks. And then you have a 9-8 season that you look like a more competitive team and you can see that the progress is there and you feel really good about going into the third year of it. So the Titans are still 2 years away. They just are. I mean, look at the roster. They don't even have a coach right now. They just are. And you can roll your eyes at that and say that's too long, but that's the reality of what John Robinson, Rand Carthon, and everyone else in charge up until before this year. That's what they did to the state of this roster. There's not enough good players. And if you have to move on from good players so that you can get better at other positions and get more draft picks and build the roster the way that you need to build it as a front office, like in 2 years, we might be blowing it all up again. The team might never be good. But this is the only way forward. You have to stockpile draft picks. And if that means moving on from a guy who's going to be a free agent anyway, you have to just do it.
The 2 problems I have with what you just said, yes, okay, the first part of this is going to be a contradiction of what you just said, and I get it. You can't control it, but I'm never going to get behind justifying 3 3-win seasons in a row. That is outrageous. It should never happen. It is a sign of complete and total incompetence of an organization. No team should ever win 3 or fewer games 3 years in a row because the first 3-win season that you have should then get you on the path to fixing that. It should not take 3 more off seasons to get above a 3-win season. The second problem I have of it that I think is much more realistic If they have another 3-win season next year, are you 100% confident that they don't fire Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker and start this process all over again? And then all of a sudden we're justifying 3 more 3-win seasons in the future. Like, this has to stop at some point.
That is a true point, and that's maybe the problem with what Amy Adams Strunk has done lately is, with her impatience and her quick trigger on some of these moves. She has to ride this through. If she doesn't ride this through, the team will never, ever, ever get better. They will never reach competitive status if they don't ride this through with this regime and let them have the time. If this regime is bringing in players that bust in the draft, which the jury's out on this draft class, obviously. So even the guys who look good right now, you don't know. And the guys who look bad, you definitely don't know, right? So we don't know. But yeah, if 3 years down the line, if they hire the wrong coach, the problem, what you're saying is totally true, and I get it. But the damage was done the day they hired Brian Callahan. The damage was done because Brian Callahan was not a good head football coach.
Claiming this as Brian Callahan does, Rand Carthon as well.
Oh, for sure. But I'm talking about the team being you're talking about you can't have 3-win seasons in a row. If you're not coached by a guy who is like literally one of the worst head coaches the league has ever seen in Brian Callahan, then maybe you win 4 or 5 or 6 games this year to last year. Like, the roster has been bad, but again, we compared it to that 2015 Titans team. It's not that bad. It's not the worst roster collection we've ever seen, full of guys who don't have a future in the league. Like, there are NFL caliber players on this roster at least. But because you hire Brian Callahan, he goes 3-14 because he's a bad coach. And then this team is now 1-6 because it's still a bad team and there's no coach and there's no offensive line coach. You have 2 assistant O-line coaches who are now the O-line coach. Like, that's going to be an issue for the rest of the season. You don't even have an O-line coach. And then next year, you're bringing in a new guy as you gut the roster. So it's like, that's just the reality of what happened when you hired Brian Callahan, is that you might have 3-win seasons in a row. And it's because of Brian Callahan and because you hired the wrong guy. The Titans' problem is not firing people too quickly anymore. Like, maybe Mike Vrabel, there's an argument. I mean, he did get 6 years. John Robinson was an emotional firing the day after A.J. Brown. He also got about 6 years. So, like, that's a long time. The problem isn't that you fired Rand Carthon too fast or Brian Callahan too fast, like a lot of media people have been suddenly talking about. The problem is hiring the wrong people to begin with.
I agree. They made 2 disastrous hires at GM and head coach after they did that when they had to get it right because they fired Vrabel and Robinson. They got it so miserably wrong. They are so much worse than John Robinson and Mike Vrabel were. So much worse. And I don't care what you say about Robinson. Controversial take I might have. I hated Robinson's last couple of years. Still think he's a better GM than Rand Carthon. That's just my person. Because at least he had a vision. Rand Carthon was playing Madden, and that's why they're trying to get out of all of Rand Carthon's moves. The new regime is trying to get the hell away from everything Rand Carthon did. John Robinson was better than Rand Carthon was. This episode's gone totally off the rails. I'm going to reel this back in for the last 10 minutes.
But let's be real. This is a great conversation. I enjoyed debating.
It is a good conversation. Just hasn't quite stayed true to the title of the episode. But last 10 minutes here, because that's all we're going to do here. The 4 guys that I think are likeliest to get traded are the 3 on the list, regardless of our opinion. Arden Key, Chigakwanko, Roger McCreary. I think I would add Draymond Jones as the 4th likeliest player to that list. He's another pass rusher in a contract year, just like Arden Key. He's older than the other guys, McCreary, Chig. Doesn't have a future here. He's actually salvaged, I think, some sort of value in recent weeks. He's been a lot better over these last 3-4 weeks than he was to start the year. Not that he's been outstanding, but he's a well-known player around the league. He's got a reputation as being a useful player. He's got 8 pressures in the last couple of games. He's got a couple sacks. He's got a fumble recovery. I think there's a chance they can get something late, just like the other guys, for Draymond Jones. Yeah. I would say those are the 4 likeliest players to get moved. Some of the others I would include on a watch list that I'm not confident are going to be moved, but certainly within the realm of possibility. Tony Pollard, Calvin Ridley. I'd probably put Kevin Zeitler on that list as well. I think that's about it, though. Am I missing anyone?
I mean, to me, like I mentioned in the tease that I wanted to say who was untouchable, and so that'll tell me who's on the block. Also, because if you're not untouchable, you're on the block. I think that's a good list of likely candidates.
Exclude rookies and sophomores, because I think
Are we excluding sophomores? Jarvis Brownlee Jr. got traded.
I know, but I don't think they're going to trade T'Vondre Sweat here at the deadline, for example.
They totally could. I mean, it wouldn't shock me as I'm talking about getting rid of guys that aren't culture fits.
Very much. I don't think he's a culture fit.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. We're not going to spend.
I like T'Vondre Sweat, and I think he's a good player. I don't know what he is as a culture fit. There's been a lot of little whispers about, red flags personality-wise, and maybe that's just people who don't understand him. I love T'Vondre Sweat. Obviously, I went to Texas. I watched him dominate at Texas. I love watching him dominate at times offensive linemen in the NFL. But my point is that the only untouchable players on this roster are Cam Ward and Jeffrey Simmons, and we even got a report of that sometime over the weekend.
That's not it.
There was a report over the weekend that the only untouchable players the Titans weren't willing to move are Cam Ward and Jeffrey Simmons.
That was stupid. That was a dumb, or that's probably someone who does not cover the team and was keeping it short. Peter Skoronski is on that list.
I agree.
JC Latham is on that list, regardless of what he's playing right now.
JC Latham
is on that list. All the rookies are on that list. They're not trading Dan Moore, obviously. Like, they can't even, you give it an $82 million contract, you can't trade a guy. No. But I agree, it's not a very long list. Like, Cedric Gray might be on that list, but he's an off-ball linebacker. I don't know if they're looking to trade him, and they're not going to get an offer good enough to make it worth their time.
Cedric Gray's a building block piece. He's a very young player who is developing in front of their eyes.
I also don't think, this might be a controversial take, they just signed Amani Hooker to a 3-year extension. This regime did. I don't think he's playing great football right now, but he's on that list too. Like, I don't think they're trading Amani Hooker. I would put Amani Hooker, Jeffrey Simmons, Peter Skoronski, all the rookies, obviously. Everyone I just mentioned. T'Vondre Sweat, I'm on the fence because I think it becomes more realistic in the offseason or near the draft. I don't think they're going to trade him right now. You're right, it wouldn't totally shock me, but I don't expect it to happen. For me, again, to summarize, because we're going to get long-winded on this episode, it's the 4 guys that I mentioned, including Draymond Jones, and then Kevin Zeitler, Tony Pollard, Calvin Ridley. Like, I have them as the potentials. I don't necessarily expect, but they're the strong potentials outside the obvious 4.
They're the most likely. And I will just say that JC Latham and T'Vondre Sweat and everyone else from the 2024 draft class are Ran Carthon guys. And Chad Brinker was part of that, so maybe it's a little different. But they've already moved on from Jarvis Brownlee Jr., and if JC Latham, I'm more than willing to give JC Latham a pass for the last 2 games where he's looked like, he actually played pretty well in Sunday's game against the Patriots. He just had a handful of snaps that were atrociously bad, so bad that it's Cam Ward conversation all over again. The mistakes were so bad that they were more magnified than anything else in his performance. And Brandon Thorne's out there tweeting out clips of him dominating reps, but those reps where he dominates doesn't matter if he's getting his ass whooped on 5 plays a game, and all 5 of those plays are, sacks or turnovers or something horrible is happening, right? Which seemed to be the case on Sunday. I'm just going to say, JC Latham was almost handpicked, I think, by Bill Callahan. All I'm saying is, dude, with the Callahans gone,
do this with you. This rebuild's going to take 7 years, and you're going to come on here next year and complain when they're winning 2 games. But JC Latham, trade that culture, Roger, just trade everyone. Let them tear it down. 0 players. Let Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker choose a whole new 53 and see how that goes.
I'm not arguing that they should or will trade JC Latham. I'm just saying he fits the profile of guys that they have moved on from quickly. And we'll see. I like JC Latham, and I love the work he did in the offseason, his body transformation, and all that stuff tells me that he is a culture leader, and he should grow into a culture leader. He also has to play a bit better. And I'm confident that he will get back to playing better, but I'm a little worried about that happening this year with, again, this team does not have an offensive line coach right now because they fired the coach and his dad was the offensive line coach, and they got 2, I don't even know anything about the 2 guys who replaced him, but they have the 2 guys who were assistant O-line coaches are now double braining on figuring out how to be the O-line coach? What? That doesn't seem like a very good situation for anyone in that room. He was an offensive
line coach in college for 20 years. I don't think he's a fish out of water.
Okay, that's good. But it's a little scary situation, Offensive line scares me. That's all I'm saying.
Interim. I think it's fine with Scott Fuchs coaching the O-line right now. He did it for 20 years in college before they hired him here. And he was not an assistant. He was an offensive line coach in college forever before they brought him in. Coached a couple of good NFL linemen. It just, I can't get I can't get there on I can't get there. I could barely get. I can't get there. Roger McCreary, JC Latham.
Wait, hang on. I'm not asking you to get there with the team's going to trade JC Latham. Obviously, that's crazy that's crazy. I'm asking you to, you're making me argue that there is a possibility, which makes it sound like I think he's going to be traded, which is not where I'm trying to get to, but because you are so zero possibility, all I'm asking you, which again, it makes me argue harder that it's possible, which I don't want it to sound like I think it's going to happen. You have to acknowledge that he fits the profile of a Rand Carthon player that they've been moving on from.
I don't. I'll be honest with you. I mean,
you think there's zero possibility that they move on from him? Zero chance.
I do. Yes, I think.
Wow, that's a little
Andre Sweat. But to me, the problem.
Well, what would you have said the chance they move on from Jarvis Brownlee Jr. was?
I don't know. I didn't see that coming for sure. I don't know that I would have put him in the same category as JC Latham because he was a 5th round pick and a cornerback with some size limitations, whereas JC Latham's top 10. Right tackle, Alabama. The reason I can't get there with you, and I don't think I'm just saying it for the sake of saying it, is it gets a little too much into the territory of they literally want to get rid of every single player that they did not take. And I don't think that's it. In fact, we know that's not the case because they signed Amani Hooker to a 3-year extension. And they're going to sign Peter Skoronski to a multi-year extension. And they love Jeffrey Simmons and are probably going to give him a new deal this summer. So I can't get there with JC Latham.
Okay, that's fair. All I'm asking is acknowledge the possibility. He's got to play better. Let's be real. He's got to play better. I think he can, and you think he can, but he definitely has to play better if he wants to really be part of this team's long-term plans. And maybe he picks it back up this weekend and starts playing better. But he's been a liability 2 weeks in a row, and Oli Udoh is not a good player and was less of a liability, at least at the end of his time as a starter for the Titans right before Latham came back. So
if he gets back here from a hip
injury, I agree.
He's going to be just fine.
I'm with you. I just wanted to. This is the trade deadline preview, and if somebody gets traded that makes us go, huh? I don't want it to be us. I want us to have prepared our audience for all possible scenarios, including the crazy ones that we don't actually believe are going to happen. But anything's on the table with this regime right now. So anyway,
we're gonna end the episode with this.
Yes.
Over under 3.5. How many trades do they make?
I think that's a good line. I'm gonna take the under, but I think they do move 3 guys. I think they ship 3 players out before November 5th. And I don't know who they are, but I think that's how many trades they end up making.
Yeah, I go 3 as well. I think it'll be Chig, Roger McCreary, and 1 of Draymond Jones or Arden Key. Whichever one they get better value for, more interest in. Again, I'm on monitoring Tony Pollard, Calvin Ridley, and Kevin Zeitler. Pretty much anything else would qualify as shock territory for me. We'll see what happens. The reason we're doing this, we did this preview episode a little early. They might start making moves before the deadline. Deadline's about 13 days away. We want to prepare you guys now. That's going to do it for a pretty strange and peculiar episode.
I like this episode. Audible. I like debating with you and going back and forth, and I think it's good content for people to listen to. And again, you know what, Justin? This is kind of crazy because I didn't know where this episode was heading. In fact, it didn't go down the road It didn't go down the road I expected. But remember, I opened the episode by saying that we always give our true, genuine, honest opinions. We never say, you argue that side, I'll argue that side. And it turned into one of our better debates that we've ever had on the show. So I think, by the way, you said the 3 players you think they're going to trade. I think the 3 players they trade are Cam Ward, Jefferson. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I know I've said some crazy things on this episode, but
you heard it here, folks. Graver wants the Titans to be an expansion team next year. Just tear the whole thing down. Cam Ward and maybe Elagayo Manor are the 2 guys he wants to keep heading into next year. And they'll have to acquire a whole new 51 otherwise. Hopefully they can do it by trading some of these guys for 6th and 7th round pick swaps, because that's how they're going to rebuild this roster apparently. That's all they're going to get here at the deadline. So we'll see what happens until tomorrow when we deliver a much more normal episode of the Music City Audible podcast. Y'all stay safe out there.
We're previewing Titans Colts tomorrow.
Oh, I can't. That's going to be so much fun. I can't wait for that. Until then, y'all stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.